class. This is your professor, Dr. Brian Lippincott, and I'm going to give you a talk today about Barry Kaufman and his revisioning and revising Abraham Maslow's theory of self-actualization and how we want to look at it in a new, exciting way to meet the 21st century and beyond. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to get started. Transcend, a new science of self-actualization, a clinical synthesis of Barry Kaufman's updates to Maslow, presented by Dr. Brian Lippincott, and this is at National University, the John F. Kennedy School of Psychology. Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to the lecture. The myth. And this is not the myth how I usually use myth as a Jungian, but this is the myth is a falsity. Maslow never actually created the 5-step pyramid. It was a 1960s management consultant's invention. Life is not a video game where you beat one level and leave it behind. We can go back and forth. We're in all the levels all the time. We're holistic people. So the reality, human maturation is an ongoing process. Needs are not stepping stones. They are integrated dynamically. We can work on multiple needs simultaneously. Yes, the need for love, the need for well-being, the need for self-actualization, the need for safety. They're all there in our psyche. So Kaufman's theory and his metaphor is to use the sailboat instead of the hierarchy, because it's not hierarchical like a pyramid. So let's hear. The hull, let's start at the bottom like we would with Maslow. The hull, security, defenses against waves. They got to be strong. It comprises safety, connection with others. We got to work together as a team, and self-esteem. You have to have confidence. Without it, you spend all your energy bailing water. And we have here the ocean, the great collective unconscious, the transcendence, the vast, choppy surf of existentialism. We're all facing the ocean, the transcendence. We are all sailing our own direction in the great unknown. And the sail, that's growth. That's the top part of the scale. Catching the wind. And it comprises exploration, love, and purpose. Having a purpose. As Nietzsche said, you can withstand any how if you have the right why, the purpose. It protects you from nowhere, but allows you to move. The sail doesn't protect you, but allows you to move. Psychological entropy. When safety needs are thwarted, the brain experiences chaos, wasting metabolic resources on vigilance rather than growth. And this is where he learned about attachment theory. This is Abraham Maslow with the Blackfoot Indians, where he thought he was going to measure competition and how people react and how they try to get status over each other, kind of an Adlerian type of way of looking at things. But no, what he found with the Blackfoot is they had really high levels of attachment because they worked together as a community. Attachment dimension, secure attachment isn't a separate category, but the optimal low anxiety and low avoidance, they're with each other. Anxious attachment is up here, okay, with avoidant embodiment. Attachment here and unavoidant here. So we have a secure attachment only in this zone here. It isn't a separate category, but the optimal low anxious, low avoidant zone in continuous spectrum. It serves as the daring base for all future exploration. Intimacy versus status. The need for connection is satisfied by secure, stable intimacy, not the expansiveness of a social network. When intimacy is thwarted, humans default to insecure drives for status, which sounds like what we're going through now. Excessive social media is often cited as another culprit of modern loneliness. Today, there are many social media outlets to allure connection, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Snapchat. To be sure, for some, social media may be the only way to connect with others, and it has enormous potential for fulfilling the need for connection. The use of dating websites can be very beneficial to the growth of relationships. One study found that couples who met their spouse on a dating website that allows connection on a number of meaningful criteria, that's an important part, the meaningful criteria, reported greater satisfaction and experienced fewer divorces. Nevertheless, this is not how most people use social media. Now, we also want to talk about the Kara blueprint, the blue zones, in cultures that foster face-to-face interactions. People tend to be highly satisfied and live long lives. Author and explorer Dan Buettner investigated groups around the world, including the people of Ikara, a Greek island in the Aegean Sea. Here are the Greeks here. Enjoying some tea. Living to 100 is common among the Ikarans. What's the secret? Of course, healthy diet and moderate exercise, but the social structure is particularly important. Instead of high social media use, inhabitants enjoy frequent face-to-face interaction and social support. Even if you're antisocial, you'll never be entirely alone, writes Buettner. Your neighbors will cajole you out of your house for the village festival to eat your portion of goat meat. The Japanese notion of ikagi, the reason for which you wake up in the morning, kagi, which is the reason you wake up in the morning, is pervasive. It gets centenarians out of bed and out of the easy chair to teach karate, or to guide the village spiritually, or to pass down traditions to the children. So this is the meaning of life here, the meaning of having a long life, and we need to really focus on that in order to live. The faces of the ego: vulnerable narcissism, extreme sensitivity and hidden shame, defensive hostility. Their motivation is fear of rejection. They're not trying to get pleasure. They're trying to avoid rejection. So they're not trying to connect with somebody. They're not trying to get something from people. They're trying to avoid something. Now in the middle, we have grandiose narcissism, entitlement and exploitation, instrumental social value. It's only what I can do, what I can get out of you, that kind of motivation, status and dominance, like a lot of people that recently have got into government. Integrated self-esteem, high agency and high communion. That's pretty good. Mastery without the need for superiority. That's what we need, mastery, to become masters of our skill and who we are, our callings, but not for superiority. The motivation is to be really good at something, authentic competence. That's, as therapists, that's what we want to be. We want to be very competent and help a lot of people. Social growth, deepening interpersonal understanding and expanding empathy. Adventurous, let's talking about growth here of a tree. Adventurous growth, seeking physical, environmental, and intellectual novelty. That's part of getting into the flow state. It's like newness. If you ride your bike down a different path, you're going to stimulate the brain in your flow state. And that leads eventually to post-traumatic growth. Forging new meaning schemas out of psychological entropy, which is chaos and loss of everything, and shattered expectations, but actually making growth. I've had so many young therapists come to me, and when they interview to get into the program, they say, I'm a victim of abuse and I want to help other people. And then they say, later on, about halfway through the program, they say, I'm a survivor of abuse. And then finally they say, Brian, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm actually kind of glad that some of those terrible things I told you about in my interview, I'm glad they happened because they give me the insight to help other people. I'm a thriver now. So I've gone from victim to survivor to thriver. That's post-traumatic growth. Exploration is the fundamental biological drive underlying all self-actualization. It is a way to make sense of novel, challenging events. Oneness, curiosities of the heart, the drive for aesthetic engagement, emotional depth, and sensory immersion, a willingness to embrace ambiguity. That's oneness. And what they're talking about is in the Big Five test, one of the categories is openness to experience. The concept of openness to experience played a central role in the thinking of the founding humanistic psychologists. Both Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, the height of self-actualization was creativity. And one of the key drivers of creativity was openness to experience. Carl Rogers simply defined openness to experience as the opposite of physiological defensiveness. So it's the opposite of being physiologically defensive. Rogers conceptualized openness to experience as a mode of cognitive processing where one is open to all of one's personal experiences, receiving conflicting information without forcing closure, tolerating ambiguity, and seeing reality clearly without imposing predetermined categories into the world. And that's what, as a therapist, we have to do. We have to tolerate ambiguity. Now, openness to experience has 4 different categories to it. One is called absorption of flow, and that you would answer yes to questions. Sometimes I experience things as if they were doubly real. Or sometimes I am so immersed in nature or in art that I feel as if my whole state of consciousness has somehow been temporarily changed. There is often a sense of closeness to what I am creating, a greater than normal emotional connection to it. Or imagination. I enjoy reading things that evoke visual images. I identify strongly with characters in movies I watch or books I read. Aesthetic sensitivity. I have many artistic interests. I have favorite poems and paintings that mean a lot to me. And intuition and emotionality. I like to rely on my intuitive impressions. I can often tell how people feel without them having to say anything. A lot of therapists have that too, obviously. Intellect, logical abstraction, the drive to conquer patterns, solve puzzles, and engage in rigorous structured truth-seeking. Now, both of these, openness and intellect, our thinking, our abstraction, our logic, are vital energies for the sale, but they utilize entirely different cognitive algorithms, intellect and openness. Now, there's D-love, which is deficiency love. And the mantra is, you look at the picture here, I'm trying to grab you. I need you because I love you. Motivation driven by an empty void. Behavior. People are utilized as anxiety reduction tools. And many people will have deficiency love and utilize sex to reduce their own anxiety or other things. Anger even can be used as that. Now, be love, that's what we want. That's being love. The mantra, as I love you because I need you, transforms into unneeding admiration. So unneeding admiration, I don't need you, but I admire you. That's how I feel toward my grandkids. I admire them. I just glorify in everything that they do. Motivation, loving others for their autonomous existence, for their existence, not your. They're not a tool for you. Behavior, a continuous steady radiation of warmth rather than a frantic grasp for fuel. That's kind of a double entendre there in our world now when we're trying to get oil from the Middle East. A continuous steady radiation of warmth rather than a frantic grasp for fuel. Maybe that's what we need now to get peace. The light triad, psychological profile of everyday saints. Humanism. They value the inherent dignity, worth, and unique individuality of every human being as a human. Kantianism, or the golden rule, the categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant, treating people as ends unto themselves, not mere tools or instruments to achieve a goal. They're not a thing to be used. That's Kant's categorical imperative, which is like the golden rule. Faith in humanity, a core belief in the fundamental goodness of others, even in the face of psychological entropy. It's like Viktor Frankl, even in the Nazi concentration camp, he had faith in humanity. Purpose and synergy. Purpose is the apex of the sale. It's the peak of the sale. It organizes our mid-level concrete strivings into a unified goal hierarchy of goals. New psyche and management. Theory Y. Environments where the success of the individual, like the Blackfoot would be an example of this, where Maslow first identified this. Environments where the success of the individual and the success of the community become indistinguishable. A rising tide rises all ships. Enlightened leadership trusts intrinsic motivation, self-motivation, because they enjoy their work, because they're doing something that's allowing them to find self-actualization through their labor, rather than in spite of it. So they're becoming who they're self-actualized by doing a job that's very helpful, whether it's building a building, being a therapist, or whatever it is, being an accountant and helping people save money so they can send their kid to college, whatever. Now, the ocean. Healthy transcendence is not abandoning the boat or escaping human suffering. It is harmonious integration with the whole ocean. When the defenses of the hull, safety, connection, esteem, and the drives of the sail, exploration, love, and purpose, operate in absolute unified synergy, working together as a team of avengers, the self becomes a vehicle for exploring the vastness of human existence in the service of a good society. Peak experience is an ego dissolution. At the height of the brain's temporal parietal junction, temporarily powers down. The self disappears. What replaces it is an overwhelming, intense perception of absolute unity with the cosmos. What the Buddhists call emptiness, the Christians and the Muslims call unity with the oneness with everything. They're just different ways of looking at the same thing. Transcender's matrix. Here we're on the left side, we have the merely healthy, the self-actualizers. We've gone beyond that. Now with Barry Kaufman, we've gone into theory Z, the transcenders. But let's talk about the self-actualizers. Focus, heavily focused on personal fulfillment, creativity, and mastery. They navigate the world effectively and confidently. Their anchor, they remain firmly anchored in their own individual identity and goals. Peak experiences are rare. Now, the transcenders, their focus is driven by values that go entirely beyond the self. Truth, justice, and beauty. Navigation, they live more constantly in the being realm, viewing the world from a higher vantage point. Anchor, ego dissolution is common, like having no self, losing their ego. Jung said, every victory for the self means a defeat of the ego. Tina Strom said, one of my supervisors and a teacher of mine who was into embodiment therapy, it says, every success by the self means a surrender of the ego. I think that's much better than what Jung said. But they experience peak stakes not as rare lightning strikes, but as normalized ways of perceiving reality. And some of the things that transcenders have. For transcenders, peak experiences and plateau experiences become the most important things in their lives, the high spots, the validators of life, and the most precious aspect of life. Now, the plateauer's experience is after Maslow had his heart attack and he was laid up, he started going for plateau experiences. That's something, and plateau experience is one that you can stay on that level as you get older a long time. You just stay, and sometimes when you're my age, if you're not going downhill, if you're just going flatline on the plateau, you're doing good. You just don't want to go down. That's what he's talking about, plateau experiences. But the transcenders have plateau experiences as they age too. They are more consciously and deliberately motivated by B values such as perfection, truth, beauty, goodness, unity, dichotomy transcendence, and B amusements, like things that are being amusements. They are more responsive to beauty, or rather they tend to beautify all things. Beauty before, beauty behind, beauty on top, beauty below. That's a Native American chant, including things that seem ugly to most people. Overlapping this statement of holistic perceiving is a strengthening of the self-actualizer's natural tendency to synergy. Intrapsychic, interpersonal, intracultural, and international. Synergy transcends the dichotomy between selfishness and unselfishness and includes them both under a single subordinate concept. It is transcendence of competitiveness, of zero sum, and of win-lose gamemanship. They transcend the ego more often and more easily. Not only are such people lovable, As all the most self-actualizing people, they also tend to be awe-inspiring, more unearthly, more easily revered. They have often produced the thought, this is a great person. Transcenders are far more apt to be innovators, discoverers of new and what actually could be, what exists in potential, and therefore of what might be brought to pass. Transcenders are less happy than the healthy ones. They can be more ecstatic, more rapturous, and experience greater insights of happiness, but they are as prone, or maybe more prone, to a kind of cosmic sadness. The Kuan Yin thing, the compassionate Buddha, or be sadness over the stupidity of people, their self-defeat, their blindness, their cruelty to one another, their short-sightedness. Perhaps this comes from the contrast between what actually is and the ideal world that the transcenders can see so easily and vividly. That's really important. The transcenders sometimes, yes, that's what I just said. Sometimes they're not quite as happy because they see the dark side, but they're all about trying to help other people in the next generation, which is what you're all doing in this room, wanting to become therapists. The plateau. Finally, it's calm. Maslow's ultimate goal wasn't a constant peak, but a serene, unitive state, a plateau of organistic valuing where the sacred is seen in the ordinary. Number one, in order to do that, you have to accept the whole self, your good and your bad parts, your light and your dark. Growth requires vulnerability and abandoning perfectionism. Integrate the shadow, harness your dark side creatively rather than repressing it. And number three, strive for growth, not happiness. Happiness is an epiphenomena. Something comes after something else, after the phenomena. Becoming a whole person is the true journey across the sea. Thank you very much. And say goodbye to you. This was a wonderful thing. I hope you saw how Barry Kaufman has upgraded or revisioned Maslow's wonderful theory of self-actualization and integrated Yalom and Viktor Frankl into the whole mix, and is talking about some of the things that we're experiencing in the world right now. Thank you very much. This is Dr. Brian Lippincott signing off.